And we now have the recording going again in the case that there are questions or comments. Hello, Tenno Enjo, or Enho, perhaps. Thank you for coming. Do I actually have... a question. Hello, Pig D20. How much Gaelic has been retained in modern French? I apologize if this was discussed before. I could not watch your entire stream. I think it has come up in different sittings. There are a number of things that might come from a Celtic source. The easiest one to identify are loanwords. Unfortunately, I can't remember any of them, but I'm sure you will believe me when I say that there are a number of Celtic origin words in French. I think many of these are related to farming in some way. For example, names of domestic animals, perhaps names of some plants, that kind of thing. Then there are some grammatical features. For example, the two-element negative that French has, n'est pas. This seems to likely be a Celtic element, although I don't know what it might be in modern Celtic languages, if it exists in them. There are some phonological developments as well. The classic is the extra vowel at the beginning of words beginning with an S. So, for example, speranza for hope becomes esperanza in late, or let's say early Western Romance. And this survives, of course, in the various Western Romance languages. Is it because the Roman and Frankish upper class never penetrated deeply enough into rural life? That might be. It's actually quite common for this kind of substrate effect to have a particular domain-specific area. For example, in the case of... actually, I'm going to start drawing with French. We have the Latin or Romance. We have the Germanic. And we have the Celtic elements. And these are largely to do with farming. What kinds of words in French come from the original Frankish period? I'm not quite familiar with. I can remember some Germanic loanwords, but many of them are from a later period in time. And of course, the Latin elements are the all of the prestige culture. A similar process has happened in the Sami languages, spoken in northernmost Europe, northern Sweden, northern Norway, northern Finland, northwestern Russia. The Sami languages are Uralic in their main origin, but there is some kind of Proto-European substrate effect in them, in that vocabulary to do with hunting and gathering comes from an unknown source. So probably words that survive from the original language of Lapland, or the previous language. This is relative, so intuitively, I would think that this would be relatively common in peripheral languages. So where the amount of actual immigrants from the origin of the language was relatively small. However, something similar has also happened with the Germanic languages in themselves. The Germanic languages, of course, are Indo-European, but they have a relatively large set of vocabulary that comes from an unknown source. What exactly? We don't know. Why exactly? We don't know either. It's a matter of some contention whether this actually comes from a substrate language, or somehow, for example, a group of Indo-European words that have not survived in other branches. I support the substrate hypothesis, but from a scientific standpoint, it's a bit weak. It's more of a like a garbage bin explanation. So words that whose origin we do not know get grouped as Paleo-European, which might or might not be the case. Hello, JD. In the case of Germanic, the words of unknown origin are also domain-specific. You have seafaring, words about boats, for example, although boat and ship as the core words for seafaring are both Indo-European. Then you have war. Why exactly? Perhaps the original inhabitants might have been more warlike. And I think probably some kinds of economic vocabulary as well. But I can't remember that accurately enough to actually say anything. The origin of the Germanic languages is in... let's draw a little bit of a map here. You have Jutland, the large islands, and the southern tip of Scandinavia. So the origins, or the place that we can place the Germanic languages at their earliest period is here on both sides of this strait, I think, Skagerrak in Danish. And this is an area with a lot of water in it. So it makes sense that the original inhabitants would have been good at moving between different islands and peninsulas. Whether or not they were particularly warlike, we just don't know. Apparently, they were not good enough at war to avoid being assimilated into the Indo-European languages. Although, when it comes to the spread of the Indo-European languages, one moment, I think this one is best done with an actual map set underneath here. One moment as I look for my map assets. Europe East is the one that I want. So, so the origin of the Indo-European languages is somewhere here in eastern Ukraine. Excuse me. I have bungled with the layer settings here a bit. Somewhere around here. And it seems likely that they would have come in from the east. And another thing that spreads from the east at a very similar rate as the Indo-European languages is the plague. And the last time that I attended a conference about this topic, the current information was that the first known wave of the plague happened in Europe shortly before the expansion of the Indo-European languages, in which case it would make sense that the Indo-European languages might have spread into a kind of a void left by the previous Europeans dying of the plague. But as I understand it, there has actually been some plague found in Scandinavia at the previous time. So this would not fit into this, would not necessarily fit into this explanation. Of course, it might be that this Scandinavian plague was further north and did not actually affect the kind of northern continental Europe, where we have this sudden expansion and replacement of the local population. How does material culture and geography affect the worship of deities? Indo-European cultures have Deus Pater as their head god, but Wodan has replaced him in northern Germanic cultures. This is a topic that I am not very familiar with. Thinking about the Indo-European and other religions in the nearby area, we have Deus Pater, so Jupiter, as a sky god in Italy. Zeus also comes from Deus, some process in Greece. Then I think that quite a lot of the Semitic main gods were gods of the sky as well. Yahweh, for example, the Abrahamic god, seems to have originally been... Actually, I have a vague recollection of my little studies in the history of the Abrahamic religions, and I think that there has actually been a similar shift in the Hebrew religion as well. That there's a movement from the god of the sky to the god of thunder, but I don't remember any enough of this to actually talk about it in any detail. When it comes to Persian, I think that those ones are relatively sky-centered as well. The Persians are famous for having their dualistic religion with a good god and an evil god, which might have actually inspired monotheism in the Hebrew religion. These were called Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu, I think, in Old Persian. You might find references to these in some kinds of popular culture that you consume. I think Angra Mainyu, for example, is used as a name in some of the Type Moon games. If you played the, I think, 2008 Prince of Persia, that game actually took a surprising amount of inspiration from actual Persia, or Persian mythology at least, and the good and evil gods of that game were actually named after the actual good and evil gods of the Persians. And I think that Ahura Mazda has some kind of a sky theme as well. The Uralic languages, I think that's a bit south. Let's draw it here. The Uralic languages also have a dualistic system, which actually might have been learned from the Aryans at a previous point in time. Although in the case of the Uralic religion, this at least originally doesn't seem to have been a good and an evil one, but instead between different domains of life. There was one main god who was associated with the sky, and he was more of a technological god, so connected with smithing and things like that, creating iron. And the other one was a god of water, connected more with poetry and that kind of thing. So what exactly the history of the or actually what is Wotan actually that much different? Now that I think about it, you have actually made I think you've made a bit of a Wotan is not, it is also a sky god. So is this actually much of a difference? When it comes to Scandinavian religion, the god of thunder, Thor, was apparently had a large Celtic significance. You can find a lot of place names named after Thor in Scandinavia. A lot of personal names and a lot of amulets connected with Thor instead of Odin. So that was a bit of a rambling non-answer, but this isn't a topic that I am particularly familiar with. Getting back to the plague hypothesis, it might be that the Uralic languages from somewhere around here might have also spread towards the west as the result of some kind of a plague event, as this happens almost exactly at the same time as the Indo-European languages spread to the west a bit further south. But my information about this topic is a couple of years old at this point. I think it was something like 2018 that I attended a conference on the topic, and things that involve genetics evolve at our knowledge about paleogenetics has evolved at an immense speed. So even current information from 3 years ago might be outdated by now. So let's see if we can think of something else as well, or perhaps start calling it a day already. Let's have a bit of spoilers again. That's always a classic. I have been working on the clips. I have not made huge progress with it because I was concentrated on actually doing some research for this presentation. As you know, I do not actually speak Irish, and I had to actually learn about this topic instead of just looking up and refreshing my memory as with the previous Snapshots episodes. Next week we are going to have grammatical cases. After how difficult Irish was, grammatical cases was a walk in the park. This is actually already finished. I might make some small fixes to it during the week, but rest assured there is absolutely no problem with this. And then the next Snapshots episode will be about Russian. Russian is a language that I speak a bit, but again I am not particularly familiar with its history, so I will have to do some actual research again. And this is also why it is quite good that the grammatical cases are almost finished, so I have the entirety of next weekend, for example, work on Russian. And then the next general information topic will probably be something about verbs. How exactly to title this is not something that I have thought a lot about yet. Grammatical cases would certainly be interesting. It would certainly help my personal language studies. I hope so, Pig. Hope that it is both interesting and helpful for you. Of course, this is mostly about how they function and what their surface meanings are. how much it would help your language studies, I don't know. But let's hope it does some amount. So when it comes to verbs, I would like to talk about the aspect, mood, and what was the third one called? And these don't really have a good name for all of them, in the way that this is kind of the equivalent to grammatical cases for nouns. But hopefully that will be interesting as well. But what I am going to do after that is still a bit in the air. Tense is time. I don't think that's the one I was thinking about. But let's add tense as well. It probably fits well into this paradigm. As for the mystery episode, I have a couple of ideas. One would be a Snapshots episode about some Finnic language. Unfortunately, they are generally quite conservative, so it would be a bit difficult to find enough to talk about for an hour. Votic might be the best one, but in this case, the developments have largely happened in the near past. Of course, this was also the case for Irish, so it might not be a problem. Another idea is to have a Snapshots episode for some Bantu language. This is something that I personally find extremely interesting, but again, the problem is that I'm not actually very familiar with, or familiar at all with, the Bantu languages, so I would have to do some actual research for this, which of course means that it's more work for me, but also I have wanted to learn some Bantu language for a while now, so having this kind of an excuse to start working on it might be just what I need. And the third idea that I've had was moving into grammatical history. This is a topic that I personally find interesting, again, but I feel like it might be a bit difficult to approach for a lay audience. Of course, many of you watching have most likely been watching and listening for a while now, so it might not be such a huge problem for you. Hopefully not. And at some point, I'm going to do that anyway. So, if not in a month, then in 2 or 3 months, I'm sure. And of course, there is always the fallback option of art streams. As I am not a professional illustrator, as some of the more famous art streamers are, this might not be interesting in the sense of seeing a masterful presentation, but I am very methodical, so you might actually be able to, if you are a poor artist or you are interested in learning drawing, you might be able to learn more from me having an anatomy presentation, for example, than watching a professional just draw extremely well. Then more comments. If possible, studying Bantu on stream might be a good stream idea. You would be doing the reps you are interested in and produce content at the same time. It will be valuable as a VOD too for other would-be learners in the future. I think a halfway point here might be interesting. I don't think actually learning So self-studying on stream would be that interesting, although I know that some particularly girl VTubers have done this, and apparently their audience enjoys it. If I were to do that, I might do it as an extra activity, so possibly on Saturdays or at some point during the week. I have considered having some kind of low effort guerrilla streams during the week. So for example, working on a drawing, for example, not really teaching anything, just working at it with the same idea of getting some reps in. And I might actually think about doing that for actually not. I was thinking about doing that for my language reps as well, but I like to be unclear about my native language and ethnicity, mostly for fun purposes. Some of the newer viewers might not be familiar with this, but apparently my accent is uncommon enough, and my appearance is generally European enough that I have been mistaken for a huge number of European ethnicities, depending on where I am in Europe and which language I am speaking at that moment. And doing my flashcard reps on stream would reveal what my native language is, so I might not actually want to do that. But maybe for drawing. I am going to look up a map of Europe again, actually. Now that we are talking about it, I am going to, pencil in a bit for which countries I have been mistaken for. That's actually quite a lot. Let's start here in the south. I have been mistaken for Spanish, or I have been thought of as Spanish. I'm going to keep saying mistaken so as not to out myself. Of course, France as well, Netherlands, Italian. In Italy specifically, the Alto Adige or Südtirol, Southern Tyrol. For Switzerland, Poland, Hungary, I think once even Croatia. What else? Irish. I have been mistaken for Irish while speaking German, as well as English while also speaking German. Finnish, Russian. Might have been mistaken for Estonian. Are you giving Lithuanian as your guess, or are you asking if I have previously been thought of as Lithuanian? I actually have not. As far as I recall, I have not been. What do I feel about Latvian witches? I am generally not particularly pro-witch. However, I am interested in traditional clothing, so I have a number of belts that, according to the folk beliefs of my home country, protect the wearer from magic. I am not currently wearing one, so I might be in danger of witches as we speak, but perhaps these belts have a residual effect even after wearing them, as to my knowledge I have never been attacked by a witch. I'm going to use a different color because I have been told I have been thought of as some kind of Nordic, which was not particularly differentiated, but is some kind of an idea. I have also been mistaken for German while in Germany. I don't think I have been correctly or incorrectly identified as German outside of Germany. I'm not quite sure about that. So here we have almost the entirety of Western and Central Europe. Belgium, of course, will be missing as Belgium does not have its own language. Belgium is split between Dutch and French speakers. Where I have not been placed by anyone is the other East Slavic languages, but of course many people do not bother differentiating between them and Russian, so this might be the cause. And the Balkans. Other than that, people have thought that I am from all around Europe. I think that might have been the final digression then. As I already got to checking, there was someone I generally watch in online. Then again, thank you particularly for everyone watching live on twitch.tv and everyone commenting. This last half an hour of chatting, of course, would not have taken place without all of you commenting. And I hope you have enjoyed yourself.